In this video, I'm going to tell you about the best and worst trades to get into so that you can make the best decision. I'm going to judge these trades on damage they do to your body, the wages you can earn, can you open a business and will it do well, and the demand from the general population. Starting off with your specialty finishes, guys. I'm putting all of your tile setters, your hardwood flooring guys, your trim guys, anybody who's got very visible kind of old world craft work in this category, all right? Damage to body. These guys have bad knees, they have bad backs, they breathe in sawdust, they breathe in chemicals from the stuff they're working with. Damage to body is pretty low in a bad way. By the way, 1 is bad, 10 is great, all right? Damage to body, I give it a 3. Wages, you can easily make between $20 and $30 an hour in these, maybe a little bit more if you're just awesome working for a very profitable company. So on your wages, I'll give those a 7. Now, the opportunity to start a business. So I own a hardwood company, so I have a decent grasp on this. There is good opportunity to start, but it's very hard to scale. Lots of hard to deal with customers you're gonna run across. These specialty finish guys are not like your flooring installers who are just slapping in LVP. They're working in very high-end homes for people with money. A lot of times very picky Karens they're working for. The business opportunity, I give that a 2 out of 10. I don't personally recommend getting into these businesses unless you absolutely love it. All right, and demand will always be there to some degree, but it's gonna be very cyclical with the economy. When the housing market is great, you're gonna have lots of demand. When the housing market is down and the economy's down, your demand is gonna be bad. All right, so on demand, I give them a 4. So that brings them to an average of a 4 out of 10. Let's move on to flooring installers. These are your guys putting in your carpet, putting in your LVP, doing more of the stuff that is not quite as difficult. I'd throw the linoleum in there. This one's hard on your body. It's just as hard as this one, maybe even more so, but I'd give it a 3 to the body. As far as wages goes, these guys don't get paid so much. I'm gonna say you're making in the neighborhood of high teens to mid 20s at best. On the wage scale, I give them a 2. Maybe 1 would be better, I don't know. Ability to start a business, yeah, super easy to start, but very hard to scale. You're competing with Lowe's and Home Depot, and I don't think you wanna be in this business at all. I give this one a 1. There's always going to be a moderate demand for flooring installers, but this is going to be very cyclical with the economy. When the economy goes down, people stop spending money on things they really don't need, like flooring. So for demand, I'll give them a 4. That brings our total to a 2.5 out of 10. That's kind of brutal, but let's take a look at our painters. For painters, the damage to the body looks different than the guys in these trades. It's gonna be more arthritis throughout the shoulders, arms, hands, and they are breathing a lot of toxins and stuff. A lot of these guys are working with high VOC products, and I'm gonna say the damage to the body is not quite as bad as these other ones, but I would still give it maybe a 4. This is gonna shorten your life for sure. Wages, painting is not seen as nearly as much of a skilled trade as many of the others. It's hard, don't get me wrong. I've tried to paint my own stuff and it doesn't go that well. But the wages are gonna be lower because customers think they can do it themselves. I would give your wages mid to low 20s, fairly similar to the flooring installers. I'm gonna give that a 2. This is not something you wanna stake your whole career on, in my opinion. Business, very easy to start, hard to be big, hard to charge a lot of money. I'd give the business, we'll give it a 2, 1 better than the flooring installer. Demand, very similar to these other ones. These finish contractors all are gonna sway with the economy. We'll give them a 4 as well. And that brings us to a total of 3 out of 10. Moving on to your drywallers. I cannot think of anything that does much more damage than drywall to the body. You're breathing the dust. It is ridiculously hard on the joints. I'm gonna give this a 1 out of 10. That's gonna be hard to top. Wages are not gonna be as good for drywallers, starting out probably in the high teens up to about the mid 20s. I'll give that a 4 out of 10. I would never in a million years open a drywall business. It is a horrible sell for the employees. Yeah, come here, don't get paid that much and ruin your body doing miserable work. From the few times I've done it, it's absolutely miserable, but it is not easy. Like, it is a real skill, don't get me wrong. As far as demand goes, when new construction is booming, it's gonna be great. But when new construction is no longer booming, that work is just gonna dry up. Because you can have work done to your house, like get new floors put in without totally redoing everything. But if you're doing drywall, you're either doing a serious remodel or you're building new. So this one swings way too much for me. I'll give this one a 2 out of 10 on demand. That brings their total to a 2 out of 10. Moving on to roofing and exteriors, I'm putting your guys who do the shingles in the same category with the guys who do your siding. A lot of times you'll see companies that's what they do. This is very hard on the body, all right? One, you're up high and you're probably gonna fall at some point too. You are baking in the sun during the summer. I mean, absolutely baking. It's hitting you. It's bouncing off the black shingles back at you. It is a miserable job when it's hot out. You're bent over. Everything about this job is very hard. Damage to body, I'm gonna give this one a 3 out of 10. Wages for this are not gonna be a whole lot different from your other carpentry jobs. I think you can expect $20 to $30 an hour, so we'll give them a 6 on the wage scale. As far as starting a business goes, there are some big liabilities with roofing and exteriors. You've got guys working up high where they can fall, and eventually someone will fall, wind up in the hospital. That's gonna be on you and your liability insurance and your workman's comp. And probably something you're gonna deal with even more than that is if you put a roof on and it springs a leak and it does a bunch of damage to your customer's home. I know you're thinking, well, I'll be really careful, that will never happen, but these businesses can be scaled very big. You'll see some big roofing companies, and that's because there is a great opportunity to start roofing businesses. We always, as far as demand goes, we're gonna kind of cover both these here. We always need roofs because if your roof is leaking, unless you're completely destitute, you are going to pay someone to put a new roof on. It's a non-negotiable. And every single building needs a roof. So as far as the business itself goes, I'll give this one a 8 out of 10. I think it's quite good. I think there's great opportunity there. As far as demand goes, I give this one a 9 out of 10. The only guy you're going to call more than your roofer is probably your plumber when you back up the John. So in total, I give roofing a 6.5 out of 10. All right, I think that's the highest score we've come up with so far. Moving on to your framing guys. I know a lot of these things can overlap, and a lot of your guys who do roofing also do framing. I get that, all right? But we're breaking it down for the video. Damage to body. This is a very physical job and you're out in the cold all the time, but you're not on the roof all the time. But from my experience doing it, it is not so physical that I find it miserable. I actually find framing quite enjoyable. Sometimes the sheeting and whatnot, I don't care for that so much because carrying those big sheets is hard. But damage to body is not quite as bad in my opinion as like roofing. All right, so I'll give this a 5 on the damage to body scale. You're still gonna have shoulder and joint problems probably when you get older, and you are out in the cold and heat, which does wear on you. Wages, these guys are gonna get paid almost exactly like your roofers, all right? I give them a 6 out of 10. Business, this is solely dependent on the housing market. Is new stuff being built? All right, there is the remodel market as well, but those are pretty closely linked together. So as far as starting a business goes, starting a framing business in the middle of a housing boom could make you very wealthy. It could be great. But when that housing boom dries up, you're not gonna have any work. Also, if you just do framing, you are gonna be a subcontractor. And I am not a fan of being a residential subcontractor almost ever, unless you're working for just like the best of the best builders. So I don't love the business model here. I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 10. As far as demand goes, it's just like your drywall guys, fully dependent on the housing market. So I don't like that at all. I'm gonna give that a 2 out of 10. So that brings us to a total of a 4 out of 10. All right, guys, moving on to electrical, HVAC, and plumbing. And I've done these all at the same time because they have a lot in common. These are your highest skilled trades, and that doesn't mean that they actually have the most skill, but they're the most regulated and they require the most licensing. In most states, it's gonna take you several years to get started and get your license if you do want to open a business, and that goes for all 3 of these in most states. Now, some states, that's not true. For example, Indiana, you don't have to be licensed to be an electrician as far as I know. Most of the other trades we've gone through so far are quite unregulated, but these ones are gonna be the most regulated out of any of them. And something you've really got to distinguish between these trades is you've got both your new construction guys and then you've got your service call guys. For example, my heater goes out in the middle of winter, I call an HVAC company, whereas there's also an HVAC company that goes and installs new heaters in brand new homes. These are oftentimes different companies doing these jobs. Starting off with electrical, damage to the body, all right? Every trade's gonna do some damage, but from my observations, in many ways, this is far less physical than most, and usually you are in a conditioned environment. Damage to body, I'll give this an 8 out of 10. Wages, these guys get paid pretty well. I believe your wages are gonna be between $30 and $40 an hour. That's pretty dang good. I'm gonna have to give that a 10 out of 10. As far as business goes for electrical, you are going to have to go through the hurdles of getting your master license or partnering with someone who has the master license in most states. But if you can get in, I see a lot of guys doing really well in this space. They can take good care of their employees, pay them well, give them benefits much easier than a lot of the other companies. I see this as a great opportunity. You know, I give this a 8 out of 10. Demand is always pretty good. You know, sometimes we will leave unfixed electrical stuff in our house. If it's not affecting us, it's not going to be quite as good as some of these we're going to get to. But demand, I give that an 8 out of 10. This brings us to a total of an 8.5 out of 10. Moving on to HVAC. You're going to have some overlap here, but as far as damage to the body goes, I think it's quite similar to electrical. Anytime you're doing new construction though, just remember the new construction guys, I think they have to work harder and it is more physical for them. Damage to the body, we'll give it an 8. All right, wages, these guys also get paid well. I think quite similar to electrical. We're gonna give that a 10. Business, I even like this one better than electrical. Are you gonna tell me in the middle of winter or the middle of summer that if your heating and air conditioning quits working, that you're not gonna call somebody? No. We need these guys like crazy. They can charge a lot because of it. So just like electrical, you are going to have regulatory hoops to jump through. You're going to need to go through an apprenticeship to get your license to get going. But if you can go through those hoops and learn the trade, for both these here, I give them both an awesome business model and an awesome demand. I'll both give these 10 out of 10. And that brings us to a total of 9.5 out of 10. That's pretty good, all right? Moving on to plumbing. Damage to the body, we're looking at very similar to the others. I give them an 8 out of 10. Some of you guys actually in these mechanicals can let me know where I'm off. Wages, again, these guys are getting paid really well, all right? I'm gonna give wages a 10 out of 10. You can easily make well over 30 bucks an hour. I'm sure in some of your states outside the Midwest, these guys are making 40, 50 bucks an hour. I don't think that there is a better business model than the plumbing business model. When you have a plumbing problem, you're going to call, all right? They have awesome demand. We need them. Obviously, we still got our regulatory stuff to deal with, but we're gonna give them a 10 and a 10, all right? That again brings us to a 9.5 out of 10. All right, guys, let's talk masonry, concrete. Now, these are not necessarily paired together, but I've seen a lot of companies that do both, all right? This is hard freaking work. You've got the worst of the elements. You've got back breaking, you know, bent over to lay the concrete, finish the concrete, run the screed board, etc. It is very, very hard on the body. Same thing with masonry, you know, mixing mud, lifting blocks, especially if you're a hod carrier. I carried hod for a big masonry company for 2 weeks, worst 2 weeks of my life. I'm not really joking. Damage to body, I give these guys a freaking 2 out of 10, just a little better than drywall. Wages, honestly, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on the wages for these guys because I'm just so far away from this world. As far as wages goes, I'm gonna guess these guys are making in the neighborhood of laborers in the high teens to low 20s, and then your lead guys, I'm sure, are making at least 30 bucks an hour. Wages, we'll give those guys a 6 out of 10. As far as the business model goes, I don't like the masonry business in the residential setting. I think if you're doing like specialty brickwork and stuff, it's gonna get nitpicked. I think if you're laying concrete, there's just so many opportunities for concrete to go wrong when it's going down. And I hate the finality of that, all right? Let's say you're a painter and you screw up a coat of paint. Okay, well, you could probably put another coat of paint on, but if you screw up pouring the driveway, then what do you gotta do? You gotta jackhammer the whole thing out, or you're gonna have an unhappy customer, right? Now, there is a lot of concrete work out there, all right? So I do like that. And if you can do concrete / masonry work that's not as visible and it's not being judged to as high of a standard, I think it could be all right. So for the business model, I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. As far as demand goes, we're always going to need your concrete guys. The masonry guys, I think that is going to be a hard business to survive in the future. You've already seen in the commercial setting how we've gone to all these prefab panels. A lot of the new industrial and, you know, warehouse space, those brick buildings you see, if you look every however many feet, you're going to have a control joint all the way up. And in those type of buildings, that's not just for movement, all right? That's because those are coming in those panels off semi trucks They lift them in with a crane. In the residential setting, you're always going to have high-end work available for your masonry guys. As far as if you just do concrete, every single house, every single construction project has concrete with it. So demand is pretty good, and it does vary a little bit on what services you offer within that. But I'll give demand a good 7 out of 10 on this one. This brings us to a total of 5.25 out of 10 for our masonry concrete guys. Next, I've got excavation, all right? I see a lot of old guys in excavation who love their jobs. People who have worked at a company for 30, 40 years because they love what they do. I think if you can take good care of yourself, the damage to your body is relatively minimal. Now, you do probably have to start out as a laborer running the shovel, and I'm sure you're always gonna have to do some of that depending on the size of the company. But damage to body, I give this one an 8 out of 10 from the knowledge that I do have. Wages are going to have a big spread in a company like excavation because the guy running the shovel that anybody can do is going to be getting paid a whole lot less than the guy running a 80,000 pound excavator. You're going to start off around 20 bucks an hour, and I'm sure you can make well into the 30s. Now, your biggest excavation companies are all commercial, all highway. Those guys can make a ton of money. Out in California where I used to live, I see advertisements for heavy equipment operators for $90 an hour. If I'd had the experience, I probably would have done it myself. Wages, I'll give these guys a 7 out of 10. As far as a business model goes, these are going to be hard to start because your equipment is very expensive. But I think the fact that you can pay people well and they like their jobs, and honestly, I just think that this work looks pretty fun. Because I see this work as enjoyable, I like the business model, but it definitely has its downfalls. For example, are you gonna stay busy in the winter if you're in a state that gets cold? I think that could be relatively hard to do. You'll see a lot of these guys' machines in like a Walmart parking lot with a big snowplow on it so they can stay busy. And it's always going to be a little bit harder to keep good workers if you can only employ them, 9, 10 months out of the year. But if you want to go to the work to break into like highway and commercial work, I think those guys can do very well. I'll give this business a 7 out of 10. As far as demand goes, in the residential market, because we've been talking mostly residential, it is going to swing with new housing, and I don't like that about it. In the commercial world, I think that you can get nice, steady work, especially if you're doing like highways and stuff. For demand, I will give this a 4 out of 10. That brings us to a total of 6.5 out of 10 on the excavation route. Now let's talk about what I think the best route is for most people. You could go take an apprentice as an HVAC, plumbing, or electrical guy and start out making 20 some bucks an hour, in a few years be making 30 plus bucks an hour or more. But life is not just about money, guys. If you like to build things, you should learn how to build. I'm going to recommend that you learn all of the general carpentry skills. And if you take like a residential building course, you're going to learn that carpentry really is every part of the house that is not mechanicals, all right? Your carpenters do everything in a house except for like your electrical, your plumbing, and your heat. These guys pour the concrete, they frame the house, they do all the finishes. These are your most skilled people in construction, and they can build anything. And I think that's what the goal should be, more than just, I want to make money. If you can form concrete, bend the rebar, cut the trim, set the tiles, you can build anything you want, and you can just unleash your creativity. And then after you understand all those aspects of construction, if you want to go apprentice and learn to be a plumber or one of these other technical trades, you can do that, guys. And it's not like you're going to take that big of a pay cut. These apprentices can still make 20 some bucks an hour. It's like, okay, so maybe you go down from making high 20s to low 20s. Is that really so bad to learn a totally new skill? I think that the joy in building is creating awesome stuff. So go out there, learn all the skills you can, and build awesome stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button and check out this other video popping up on the screen right now. Watch it next.